Hi, I'm Bob.Woolverton, your Northwest Realty Advisor. Today, we're going to talk about negotiations in a real estate transaction. I'm going to give you 5 things that you didn't know about negotiation that'll probably surprise you when it comes to a real estate transaction. So that's our episode today on Northwest Realty Advisor, Real Estate Negotiations. So the 5 things I'm going to tell you about real estate negotiation today is that 1, real estate negotiation training is very rare. We'll elaborate on that. I'm also going to give you some examples of bad negotiation that I see every single day, and it just drives me crazy. 3, I'll give you some examples of good negotiation tactics. And then number 4 is actually going to be the number 1 tip that I give to all of my clients, and it actually liberates them when they're making their decision whether they should go forward in a deal or not. And then number 5, I'm going to suggest that you treat your purchase or sale of your home as you would with the care and caution that you treat your investment portfolio. So let's get into those 5 points right now. So number 1, negotiation training of real estate agents is extremely rare. Now you would think it would be just the opposite. They would be in classrooms like this all the time and they'd be working on their negotiation skills. Well, the Washington State Department of Licensing does require that real estate brokers get additional training every year to hone their craft. But what I see more often than not is agents that'll go to classes that are free. Real estate negotiation training is not free. It costs a lot of money. So in essence, if you're going to become a skilled negotiator, you're going to pay your tuition. So that's my guess as to why there's not more agents that are trained in real estate negotiation. Now the number is actually very, very small because fewer than 3 in 1,000 agents is actually trained in real estate negotiation whatsoever. Actually, the number is 2.7 per 1,000. So what I've got here in this graphic behind me is this is 1,000 real estate agents. And I've got 3 red guys in there that have negotiation training. So there's this whole sea of agents out there and very, very few have negotiation training. Now, I'm one of the red guys. I've gone through the various levels of negotiation training and I've actually achieved my master level designation. So this is my certificate to prove that I've got my master level designation in real estate negotiation. So basically, I had to go through levels 1, 2, and 3. You have to go through all 3 levels before you can get your master level designation. And like I said before, it's very, very rare. Now, item number 2. So let me give you an idea what negotiation is not, but yet I see it every day from untrained real estate agents. So the very first example that we'll start with is I've seen this happen, that normally if an agent's going to submit an offer, they'll call the listing agent and inquire, do you have any offers in hand? Are you expecting any offers soon? Is there any urgency that I get this offer in right away? But I've also seen where the buyer's agent doesn't call at all. One morning the listing agent wakes up, oh, hey, there's an offer in their mailbox. Okay, so in this case, let's say the listing price is $895,000 and the offer that came in unannounced is $875,000. What I've seen happen is that the untrained agent will just do a counter offer and say, well, how about $890 then? If $895 is not your price, how about $890? They just gave away $5,000 of their client's money. There's no negotiation there. Why would you give away $5,000 of your client's money with absolutely no discussion whatsoever? Yet I see it happen all the time. And as far as the client should be incensed because they're just giving away your money for absolutely no good reason. The other thing that I see happen quite frequently in poor negotiations, and we'll use an example here, say the listing price is $900,000, the offer comes in at $885, and then for whatever reason the seller decides, okay, well, we'll counter at $895, so now they're $10,000 apart. And then the agents say, well, let's just split the difference. Well, why would I split the difference with you because you set the basement? If your offer was $850,000, should I just split the difference with you? There should be some compelling reason as to why you're indicating that the market value on the house that I set is not the proper market value. And it's your duty to convey me or to convince me that my numbers are wrong. But to just arbitrarily, let's split the difference, that's just giving away my client's money, and that should never be acceptable. But I see it happen all the time because clients are focused on the wrong end result. They're focused on getting to the closing table rather than making the most amount of money for their client or negotiating the most amount of money for the client. The other big mistake that I see constantly by untrained agents is they give up far too much information. Remember, I talked about making that phone call because you're trying to find out about making I find out what's motivating the client or motivating the other side, what their interests are, so on. Well, I see agents that when you ask the right questions, they give up way too much information, and I've actually seen agents allow their clients to do the same thing. I'll give you a recent example that I had where I had basically an open house, and an agent and their client comes in and they look at the property. Was a condo that I had for sale, and then the client comes back in and he wants to ask me a question. Well, I could easily answer his question, but it would have been completely inappropriate. I said, excuse me, I do have an answer for you, but it would be inappropriate for me to answer that without your agent being present. Now, I'm not going to do anything unethical, so I take him back out, and we're in front of his client, and I said, this is the question your client asked me, this is the answer that I'll give. But during this dialogue, now I'm in my negotiation phase, and I'm finding out what their motivation is, what their interests are, and he's giving me way too much information, and the client, his agent's just standing there letting him do it. So I was able to anchor him at a higher price. I knew that his motivation was high in a variety of categories. I shared this with my seller. We set a price, and we wound up actually getting more money than my seller even wanted. And all because that person's agent let them give up far too much information. But it happens all the time by untrained agents. Now, let's talk about what negotiation is. Negotiation is a discussion. It's a conversation where I, as the negotiator, I'm trying to identify what you find of value. And it's not always money. People are motivated by a whole variety of things, and you would be surprised sometimes what's motivating people. And like I said, it's not always money. Or you find out what they assess value into. Now, there are specific techniques that I use to identify your value and your motivation. I'm not going to give those up in this video, but it's interestingly enough to know that at the Harvard Negotiation Project, there were FBI hostage negotiators that participated in the Harvard Negotiation Project, and what they found was that techniques used by hostage negotiators work equally well in business. So there are specific techniques that you can use to find out this information, to have people just basically freely give you the information, and particularly if they're not trained in negotiations, oh my gosh, they give up way too much information. Now, when I talk about a conversation, let me give you an example. This is not a real in-depth one, but in this particular case, we had a house where the listing price was $389,000. So I call up the agent and I said, do you have any comparables that justify this market price, or was this listing price set by your client? Well, the other agent tells me, he says, well, I think the best comparable is such and such house that just sold in that neighborhood for this price, which was $365,000, and yes, my seller set the listing price. Well, I verified the information he gave me, and I agreed. The most comparable property was $365,000. So where do you think our offer was? $365,000. Not anywhere close to their $389,000. Now we got signed around on the $365,000. Then we go to inspection, and we found some other issues in the home that was going to be pretty expensive to remedy. And this is where we move into the next point, and this is the number one tip that I give all of my clients that actually liberates them in the negotiation transaction. And that is that no deal is better than a bad deal. Now, normally when I try to explain this verbally, I don't do a very good job of it, so I'm hoping this graphic will help. So when you look at the hierarchy of deals, when you look from a great deal, a good deal, a fair deal, and a bad deal at the bottom, no deal is better than a bad deal. So this house, we made the offer $365,000. We find the inspection issues that are going to be more costly. It was rapidly going from a good deal to a bad deal. But because I had already set this expectation with my client, she says, no deal is better than a bad deal. We're going to go find another house. It was so liberating for my client because she was already set with that expectation and knew exactly what that meant. Said, this is becoming a bad deal. We're going to move on. And so that's the key point that I share with all of my clients right up at the beginning. To set that expectation is understand that no deal is better than a bad deal, and we will walk away from a bad deal. Now, there's also another fallacy out there, and that people believe that real estate agents are motivated to get the most amount of money in a transaction because their commission is higher, because it's a percentage of the sales price, right? Well, that's not always the case, so let me give you an example. Let's go back to that deal where we had it $895, and then the buyer came in at $885, so now they're $10,000 apart, and they say, okay, well, let's just split the difference again. Well, now the agent, if they agreed to just split that difference, they just gave up $5,000 of your money, but it only reduced their commission by $150. Do you think that if an agent is focused on the wrong outcome, in essence just getting to the closing table, that they would easily forfeit $150 to get to the closing table and get to a payday? Probably. But if you're a trained negotiator, that's not your motivation. Your motivation is to get the most amount of money, the best deal for your client, and that's where your focus is. So not all agents are focused on getting the highest price. They're more focused on getting to that closing table and getting to a payday, because it costs them far less to settle or to split the difference than it does out of your pocket. Now, the last tip that I want to give you is whenever you're buying or selling a home, treat it as though it's a portion of your investment portfolio, and treat it with that same due care and caution. And the reason I say that is because for most people, their home purchase may be the biggest asset in their investment portfolio, or at least a large portion of it. And yet they'll go to a discount brokerage firm to handle such a huge investment. Now, in my past, I used to deal with a discount brokerage firm for my stocks, for my investment portfolio, and I did all my own investing and my own research. And yes, sometimes I'd hit a home run, and other times I would be frustrated like this. All the fundamentals in this company were so good. Why is the stock price dropping out? And so in the long run, I probably didn't appreciate the full benefit of my investment portfolio. And I finally got to the point I said, you know, I need to hire a professional that knows what they're doing, has the time to invest in it, to stay on top of all of the trends in the market. And so I found a chartered financial analyst. Now, when I started my search, what I was finding was certified financial planners. And what I found, they're everywhere. And it seemed to me like virtually every insurance salesperson was a certified financial planner. Much like you can find a real estate broker just about anywhere. They're everywhere. But the difference with a chartered financial analyst is that designation is much harder to obtain. Because it's much harder to obtain, it's very rare to find somebody with that level of expertise. And when you do find them, they're going to charge you more, but the results far outweigh the cost. Well, that's exactly what I find with a certified or with a master certified negotiation expert, is that they are very, very rare. The certification is much harder to obtain, and they're very rare. Like you saw, fewer than 3 in 1,000. Now, they're going to charge more. They're not going to work for the same price that a discount brokerage firm is, but the end result is going to far outweigh the cost. And that's where when you start looking at agents that every day will give away $5,000, $10,000, or even more of your money just to get to the closing table, that's what's costing you money in the long run. So my suggestion to you is that use the same due care and caution that you would use in your investment portfolio with the sale or purchase of the home that you're going to buy. So those were the 5 things that I wanted you to know about negotiation and real estate transaction. One, that negotiation training among real estate brokers is extremely rare, fewer than 3 in 1,000. I gave you some examples of bad negotiation where, in essence, untrained agents just give away your money, and I see it every single day. Then I gave you some examples of good negotiation, but I'm also not going to give you all the tips and clues that I use, because that would be playing my hand and I wouldn't be as effective for my clients. And then the number 1 tip that I give to all my clients is that no deal is better than a bad deal. And finally, please treat the sale or purchase of your home with the same due care and caution that you do your investment portfolio, because it is a large portion of your net worth. I'm Bob.Woolverton, your Northwest Realty Advisor. That's our episode for today. We have new episodes every week. Please click that subscribe button and you will get notified every time we get a new video posted. And if you know somebody else that would find value in this video, please share the link with them and encourage them to subscribe so they'll get the notifications also. I'm Bob.Woolverton, your Northwest Realty Advisor. I'll see you next week.